Well, here we go. Welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. I'm glad to have you here. Look, this is just for cabinetry and woodshop and architectural millworkers and closet industry people who are curious to find ways to work smarter, not just harder, in the business of their woodshop business. My name is Dominic Rubino. I'll be your host. Today's guest is Dr. Paul Jasper out of Boston. That's right, a doctor. Aside from being a doctor, he also went to the Furniture Institute of Massachusetts and the North Bennett Street School. He studied there, and he then went on to produce in his spare time, in his free time, like a doctor has much of that, Chippendale furniture and William and Mary furniture with all of its, elegant curves and lacquers. He runs copperpigwoodworking.com, and he makes absolutely incredible is not the right word, just absolutely stunningly beautiful sushi boards, heirloom boxes, and with treatments like pyrography and marquette and inlay. I'm not sure if this is going to come across the right way, but the stuff he makes is the stuff a pirate would never leave behind when it ransacked a ship. How's that for a visual? How's that for grabbing you? Anyways, not only is he a woodworker in his spare time and an artist, but he's a scientist who deals with immunology and does a lot of cancer research, specifically on the mathematical side. So this is a different episode than you've heard on my show before, and I'm glad to do it because I don't want to do the same thing all the time. I want to bring you things that are going to open your mind, have you think about the business from just one little tiny ray of light different than you've thought about it before. So today we're going to be talking about a woodshop artist talks original design with Dr. Paul Jasper. Anyways, back to this podcast before we get to his interview. What's this podcast all about? I help contractors just like you get back in control of their woodshop, even if you don't know where to start. And I do that by showing you how to use simple systems in 3 different places: in the office, on a job site, and in the shop. And look, the truth is, you don't need a lot of extra time or a business degree to build a profitable and solid construction or contracting business. What you need is simple systems and, of course, some new ideas to old problems. That's why on this podcast, we do expert interviews and real case studies like today from other construction company and woodshop owners, regardless of what kind of woodshop they're running, who are probably a little bit like you. In the case of Paul Jasper, his shop's going to be a little like yours and not a lot like yours, but I think that's where the brilliance is going to come through. So if you run a family business, if you're in partnership with somebody else, or if you're running this business solo, either way, if I've never met you, here's what I know about you already. Your work ethic is bonkers. It's absolutely insane. And it's that kind of work ethic and drive that cannot be taught. It's just inside you, burning and smoldering on its own. I'm here to talk to people like that, and I'm glad you're here. And I'll tell you right up front, what we talk about on the show is more directed at companies with 6 or 7 employees, if not, 10, 20 and above. And that includes subs. Now, if you're smaller than that, it doesn't mean you're not going to get value. It just means what we talk about on this show, episode after episode, is going to challenge you a little bit more. And maybe that's exactly the right place for you to be. Look, in my regular life, if you haven't pieced it together yet, I'm a business coach, and I specialize in working with construction and contracting companies. But even more specifically, I specialize in working with people like you who've got that internal burning desire for more. They just want more. And not only am I a business coach, I'm a business coach who's done it. If you've heard any of my bios before, you know that I've built and sold a number of businesses of my own. Some of them have been fantastic successes. Some of them have been abysmal failures. On the success side, I built one of my companies up to $120 million in sales before I sold it. Another company I built from 6 locations to 237 around the world before I sold that one. I'm not able to speak about the details because I'm still under an NDA. But look, we specialize as business coaches in strategic planning for contractors, business coaching for contractors, specialty courses for contractors and construction professionals like yourself. So if you're interested in those things, find a way to get in touch with us. Before we get onto the show, I want to do a very business coachy kind of thing. I want to challenge you. Dr. Paul Jasper is going to talk about some things today with me that are different than the way you normally approach your business. And that's okay. This is the kind of place where I want you to have different ideas filter into your mind. The challenge that you have in front of you is, how are you going to find one nugget of information, one tool, one way of doing things? And how are you going to apply that in your business and apply it for the win? You guys ready? Let's get to it. Mr. Paul Jasper, how the heck are you?
Excellent. Excellent. Nice to meet you, Tom.
Yeah, you too. I mean, we've kind of met before because we had the prep, and I was very surprised to hear that you're a scientist
Yes,
and a woodworker.
I am.
Like the screeching noises in my head are.
I feel like there's a lot of woodworkers who have a bend towards math and science, but maybe that's just me.
I think you're right because obviously we have to measure things with precision. Um, yeah, we've had other people on the show, and I've met lots of other people who had other passions, lots of musicians. But then I
Mm.
think there's a really strong correlation between music and math as well. Yeah. Well, we should get into that. Today, you and I are going to talk about your particular take because you're different. This is going to be a different show.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm afraid I might upset some of your audience members.
We're going to spill the milk. Well, I think, but you and I talked about that just before the show here, folks. And maybe we should say this, Paul. I said, as long as
Yeah.
you're not going to be offended, I'm not going to be offended.
Oh no, I enjoy disrupting and thinking in different ways that is somewhat upsetting to the norm.
Mm. Because you're an artist, pure and pure, and I'm a business
Uh,
guy.
I mean,
But
you could put us in those bins. The distinction's never as clear as we might think, but in general terms, we're approaching from very different angles onto the same territory.
yeah, I love it. I think it's going to be interesting. So today we're going to talk about, um, you live in a world of original design and creativity. And how does that work for people who are running a wood shop? Maybe people
Yes.
who are running a classic wood shop where they're building production furniture, cabinetry, but also people who are doing craft stuff. So we're going to have a pretty interesting conversation around that. But before I start, let me do this. Mr. Paul Jasper, who the heck are you? And how
That's
is
an
it you come to be speaking to all of these contractors and tradespeople in the cabinetry, finished wood trades all over the world?
that's an intimidating first line.
I know, isn't it? It's abrupt.
uh yeah, my name's Dr. Paul Jasper.
Hmm.
I am
I'm so sorry. I
life.
forgot that part.
That's
Doctor,
fine. No, I'm just
apologize.
kidding.
Your
It's just
mom
kidding.
would
I
be
mean, I
so
am, but I
offended
was.
right now. Your
Oh
mom would be
no,
calling me.
no, I'm totally kidding. I mean, I am Dr. Jasper, but when people call that, it makes my skin crawl because I feel like it's very pretentious. But anyway, I'm a lifelong scientist. I have my PhD in immunology, the immune system, and I've been working on cancer research and autoimmunity
Wow.
from a perspective of mathematical modeling. So it's a bit of a hybrid field. I'm a part
Mm.
biologist and I'm a part mathematical modeler. And we use the mathematical models to try and understand things about biology. Now, that's my first life,
Hmm.
and I still love that life. I still do it full time. And then I've had this second life, which is woodworking. And it was an inexplicably strong draw. Like I didn't almost have a choice to pursue it. Uh, when I bought my house, there was an 80-year-old gentleman across the street who was a woodworker, and I became fast friends with him. His name was Hal, and I was in his basement and I saw a wood shop, and
Yeah.
it was like floor to ceiling. It was like Sanford and Son. There was no room, floor to ceiling. I mean, every machine, every scrap of wood. And I looked around this place in wonder, and I was just awestruck. And he could probably see it in my eyes. And he said, "Do you want to make something?" And I was
Wow.
like, hell yeah, I want to make something. So I came home the next day and he had drafted a stool on a piece of graph paper with his
Uh,
little mechanical pencil. And he's like, we're going to build a stool and that's going to teach you what all these machines do. And
wow.
that was how I got started woodworking about 17 years ago. Isn't that cute?
It's fantastic. It's great. It's nice to have that neighbor across the street. You can go over
Isn't that
there
great?
and chat and make something. I get this image of like almost a Santa's elves workshop where you guys are just working away
It was.
quietly, just doing
It
stuff.
was.
And
That's it. It was exactly as you described.
yeah, there's so many
So
directions I already want to go. I have to stop. I'm going to say hi to somebody while we're
yeah, go
talking on the
ahead.
show, to Dr. Cameron, who's in Jamaica, who thinks he's the only doctor who's in woodworking. I'm saying hi to Dr. Cameron in Jamaica, who's a doctor in Jamaica. He's taken the boot camp course with
Excellent.
us. But he's a
Excellent.
doctor. And what what made me remember him is because you said he was drawn to it.
Hmm.
And Dr. Cameron's the same. He's just like, I have to do this. It's not I want to, or I thought I'd try it. I have to.
Yeah. It's like, and it's almost difficult to explain how strong. And so I stayed with it from that point of Hal introducing me and being my first mentor. And then, I learned as much as I could through internet for about 5 to 7 years. And then I started taking classes at this world-renowned school in Boston called North Bennett Street School, and then the Furniture Institute of Massachusetts. And I started getting into really fine furniture and trying to up my skill sets into the realm of period furniture. So William and Mary and Chippendale, that sorts of thing.
Wow.
And eventually, after about 10 to 12 years of that, I hit a wall. And I think this starts our conversation, Dom. I had an existential crisis. Now, I had built a William and Mary high chest, and it was beautiful. It's all out of curly maple. It looks similar to anything you might see, in the period from the late 1700s or early 1700s. And it became clear to me that I can make what I want to make now. Like, I have the execution skills. I can turn on a lathe. I can do hand cut joinery and hand tools and machines and all that. And I realized, like, I can make what I want to make. Now the question is,
what do I want to make?
What do you want to make?
Yeah.
Now
I can almost see the question. You're like, well, I've done it. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. You're building what people would call beautiful stuff, but it's not maybe this comes back to one of the things I learned about you. Original design seems to be something that draws you.
That's right. So I hit this wall, and it's like, well, now what? Am I going to just keep copying designs of the past and just keep punting on design, or am I going to figure out who I am as a person, as an artist? What do I have to say about design? How do I get into design? How does anyone get into design, original design?
Right.
And so from that was like the start of my second life in woodworking, which I call Copper Pig Woodworking, is where it's all about original design and me trying to figure out who I am as an artist. And that being said, I'm probably not your typical guest here. I'm not so much thinking about money or profit or from a business perspective, but more about personal fulfillment, happiness, feeling good about something I may have achieved outside of money. And that has to do with original ideas and art and design.
I'm so glad you said that, because the reason that I had you on the show, and we had to think about it on our side too, right? Because we review all the people that we invite on the show, is we talk a lot about profits and profitability and systems. And I can't ignore the people who are what we would traditionally call smaller. Smaller doesn't mean bad. It means smaller. Like there's a gentleman that we just talked to the other day that took himself from 0 to 150,000 and then to 450,000. Now he's doing $1 million. And even there, I just described him by revenue, not by the passion that right? And listen, I don't know if you're like me, but the smell of wood, there's just nothing better than the smell of cut wood, right? It's just beautiful. It's so honest. It's simple. And I love it. But there's people out there that need to hear your perspective so they understand, yeah, I am a craftsman. Yeah, I'm doing classic kitchen design, maybe. So they're not seeing design the same way as you, but I want to add my own touch to it. So maybe you're going to add some perspective to that. And then there's artists out there who are building things I've never even heard of, who are really going to appreciate your message too.
I hope so.
And at least one other doctor.
I know three others that are woodworkers. But anyway, what I'm going to be asking you, Dom, and the listening audience and myself is, and this, by the way, disclaimer, this may be terrible for your business. I think in the short term, some of this thinking represents risk. It represents going out on a limb, putting yourself in a vulnerable position. But I hope in the long term, if you do take somewhat of a risk, trying to put yourself out there in terms of what are my ideas for original design, I hope that with time, there could be a large payoff. So, let me start by asking, when you do kitchens or you do cabinetry or you do furniture, do you copy what has already been done? Do you allow yourself the opportunity to explore your own designs? How do you get into it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of creativity that goes into that, right? But it's not the same creativity that you bring. So not to overstate it or understate it, but we're building rectangular boxes with an opening on the front, maybe sometimes an opening on two sides, but that's what it is. And so the creativity comes in the design elements that people are bringing. the customers are bringing, the way we're going to use the space. But ultimately, we're trying to set nested rectangles into a space so that we can make usable, functional furniture, right? Your stuff is, I mean, it's too bad this is a podcast where, it's audio. It's a video for YouTube, but we can't see some of the crazy, intricate, beautiful things you've built. Actually, maybe you can describe some of the things you built with your, I can't remember the name of I'm so sorry. I've forgotten the name of the technique where you burn.
Oh, pyrography.
Pyrography. That's
Yeah,
not a word I use every day, so it's filed in a dusty corner.
Yeah, so the things I make, look, I'm literally all over the map. And that's why I say it's terrible for business, because making the same thing twice, it can be boring in some ways. I have the luxury of having my scientific job, which affords me the flexibility to pursue a lot with a lot more flexibility what I do in the shop, which means can we take elements of fine art? Can we bring drawing? Can we bring Japanese patterns? Can we bring inlay? Can we bring gold leaf and new materials into the woodworking space and combine them with traditional forms that we're not used to seeing? So pyrography is one example where you're basically just drawing on the wood with a red hot pen. And that brings into the equation, well, how good is your drawing? How do we draw? How do we, what do we want to draw? Do we add shading and dimension? So that's just one example of bringing other art forms, towards the woodworking space. Another would be materials, mixing materials. We don't have to stay in wood only. We can have brass. We can have foil inlays. We can, all different types of materials, all different types of techniques. So I'm completely all over the map with what I make, from coffin-shaped jewelry boxes to tea boxes with ornate animals burned on them through my collaboration with Jen. Again, all over the map. If you go to my Instagram, you can see. But Dom, I want to come back to something you said, which is, how much creativity can we have in essence, because we're building nested rectangles? And right as when you first said we build rectangular boxes, the first thing that popped in my head is, well, do they have to be rectangles?
Oh,
that is good. Literally what I thought.
Hey, listen, Paul, I probably offended a lot of people out there because that's not how they see things. But I'm trying, again, this is where I wanted you to have the show, because there's a little bit of friction, right? I want to build something that's beautiful and functional that people can use. And, there's lots of beauty in it itself. And there's people out there who say, well, I'm a kitchen designer. I design spaces. Cabinets are part of the spaces, but I'm a businessman. I want us all to do that and make money at it. And we can make money at it by standardization, by having systems, processes, totally right? But this is the beauty of this conversation, is to open ourselves up and say, maybe on a 5-panel door, pyrography, which, is art and it's so subjective.
It could be amazing.
It could be amazing. I had one client who said, I don't know why they wanted it, but one of my clients wanted the middle panel of the front facing panel covered in cowhide. He goes, we thought it looked horrendous, but they loved it.
Hey, as long as they love it. One thought I had is, let's say you make a kitchen assembly and it's mostly rectangles and standard drawers. What if one of the drawers pivoted out and was like sort of a semicircle or a half moon, or, you had one round drawer? I've been thinking about integrating a circular drawer into an otherwise square cabinet. Think of how much that one unique drawer would become like a lightning rod as a design element. It would draw your eye to it immediately. I'm not saying replace the whole kitchen with other shapes, but perhaps even one new shape in the entirety of a kitchen could actually really turn things on their head.
The architectural mill workers who are listening are saying, we do that. We do arches and we do gables and we do, some beautiful things.
Absolutely.
Because they're architectural millwork. They're different than kitchen cabinets. But at the same time, there's room for that creativity, as long as I'm gonna say it, as long as they can bill for it.
Absolutely.
Because they'll say, we can build anything. We can build anything you want, as long as I can build for it.
Absolutely. It's a great point.
Yeah.
And so, my question to your typical audience then is there one design element that you think could become a calling card of your business? It would differentiate you. If people saw that one element, they'd say, holy crap, I've never seen that before. That's incredible. Could that be a differentiator in terms of your business? Could it make you stand out, so it's not just like every other kitchen?
Yeah. So That's a great question. I'm glad you posed it. So we're asking that of everybody here. What can you do product wise, like what you're actually building that's a differentiator? You know, I've told the story here many times. There's one gentleman that I know whose big, hairy, audacious goal is to produce the first 3D printed kitchen in his city. So for me, the artistic part of that is, who does he have to become? How does his shop have to evolve to be the company that prints a 3D printed kitchen? Somebody else might say, well, we do great things with lights and glass and electronics. And somebody else might say photovoltaic panels and photovoltaic paints to capture some of the sun's energy that streams into your kitchen that gets converted into. So there's lots of ways to have those product uniqueness, but everybody out there's got to figure out how they're going to do it. If they want to be unique on product, they might want to be unique on service. They might want to be unique on something else. Yeah. What do you see when you see a kitchen? When you walk into a kitchen, where are the design elements that you see flexibility on for, or no, why don't I say it differently?
Where's the opportunity?
Where's the opportunity for creativity?
Certainly panels, the panels of the cabinet doors. I often am drawn to look at them. Definitely the drawer structure, the structure of the layout of the drawers. If I saw some non-standard things, I always liked some of those corner cabinets because they got a little creative with them, whether they're circular and they rotate around. I always thought that these little elements that I had never seen before, cute little drawers that you're not exactly sure what their function is, and you open it up and it slides out and it has either cutting boards associated with it, or I don't know, there's just anything that's just non-traditional seems to grab my attention. I think, oh, that's very clever. How did they do that? Or
the one that
why don't more people do that?
The one that captures me now is like charging stations. Like instead of having all your devices all over the counter, which might be okay, but is there an opportunity to take some of that space and use it as a charging station or something else?
I love that.
And that's just me. I'm not.
And could you make it pretty? Could it be both functional and beautiful? Could it be a design element? Could there be a pattern? Could it be, a family related monogram, or who knows what? There's a lot of opportunity for customization.
Yeah. When you go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you look at the tools that you have, how have your tooling changed in your shop? Because you went from making period furniture. So furniture is your way into the finished wood trades, or the finished wood. Yeah. I shouldn't say trades with you, but into the finished wood space. But how have your tools changed? Like, what was the first piece of machinery you bought after Hal said, "You're free, go on your own, build your own stool"?
Well, most of it was Hal's Hal's to begin with. He bequeathed a lot of that to me. The standard traditional machines, but the real paradigm shift came when I invested in hand tools in myself. I don't mean invested in buying them. I mean invested in learning how to use them. That was the differentiator between I'm okay at this to I can make things that look like they should be part of a fine furniture exhibit, or are similar to what you might see in a period,
like museum quality finish.
Yeah, it's museum quality furniture. And the great differentiator was learning hand tools. The machines get me in the ballpark, but it's the hand tools that bring it to that new level. And again, we talk about profitability. Hand tools are terrible for profitability.
Of course.
Just terrible, right?
Yeah. Course.
So again, it's a balance of, banging things out on the machines versus taking your time and using the hand tools to really finesse the design in a way that a machine can't. So for me, hand tools became essential to what I made. And then, of course, every new type of work you do, whether it's pyrography or marquetry, which is, art with like wooden veneers, or carving or wood turning, or CNC, which I have a CNC machine. All of these things require their own sets of tools and skills. So my shop clearly, or it quickly became very out of control, and I have a hard time taming it.
So do you do your work on spec, or does somebody come to you and say, I want you to build something that looks like this, but I'm not sure exactly? What's your...
If people come to me with something they want made and they know exactly what they want it to look like, I am not the person for you.
Oh, well, that's a great answer. And actually, that would attract some people.
Look, I mean, the Copper Pig is about me and my approach to design. And that means that I have some say in the design for every piece. But however, I also want the customer's design. It's really a collaboration and we work together. So they say, I want a sushi. I had someone recently contact me. I want a sushi board for my wife or my soon to be wife. It's going to be my wedding present to her.
Wow.
And I said, wow, that's a very unique wedding present. You guys must love sushi. And he's like, oh, we love it. We love it. We love it. And I said, so what are you thinking about design wise? And he said, well, we love mountains. And I thought, oh, wow. Okay. What am I going to do with that? We love mountains. And so I started thinking, okay, how can I somehow integrate a mountain into a sushi board design? Like, so, okay. So I started thinking, okay, it could be two-dimensional. You could take a piece of wood that looks like a mountain, or perhaps now with my CNC, perhaps I could mill a mountainscape, like a topographical map, using the CNC machine and have it be three-dimensional and have it rise up out of the surface of the sushi board.
Right.
And it turns out they're getting married in Franconia Notch, New Hampshire. And that's the exact mountain range I was able to download the topography for. And I milled Franconia Notch out of the middle of their sushi board. And I made matching soy dishes, and it was all cherry burl. It's really beautiful with matching chopsticks. And he picked it up yesterday and he's going to give it to her in about a week. And I can't wait to hear how that goes. So it's a bit of a dance with me and the customer. It's like the customer comes, they have some ideas, I understand them thoroughly, and then I perhaps give some design ideas. And I think the majority of the people who want my work are looking for my design input as part of it.
Let me ask for a second. Did you take pictures of that, and are they on your Insta? Yes. Or okay? Do you mind repeating your Instagram?
Yes, it's Copper Pig Fine Woodworking. That's my Insta.
I know there's a story behind Copper Pig. Can we deviate for 2 seconds? It's just kind of a cute thing.
Well, first of all, let me ask you, Dominic, is naming your business after a farm animal a good idea when you're hoping to make high-end custom pieces?
It's probably okay.
I guess I don't know.
Copper Pig has something. It has something folksy about it.
I don't know.
And there's a bit of a. The words are Copper Pig isn't. Pink pig might give me a different feeling than Copper Pig. So
maybe the copper.
It's not bad. Naming a business is a very tricky thing because you can get too fancy and lose people. Right? Or you can be very specific, like cabinetsisus.com. Like, then that also pigeonholes you a little bit too much. But yeah, why do you ask? Are you
well, my wife is like, well, on the top of your shop is the Copper Pig weather vane that you built, and you put that up on your shop. We have a cupola and a weather vane. And she goes, why don't you call your business Copper Pig? And I thought, let's do it. But then a few years down the line, I thought, oh boy, was that a mistake? Like everyone's like, so they use their name, like Dominic Rubino, Fine Woodworking, and I thought, Copper Pig. But, everyone I've asked the question to, they didn't seem to have a problem with it.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it. I mean,
so
we could go off on a different business tangent on how you name your business, and naming it after yourself, by the way, has limitations.
Fair.
Right? Because I'm not going to buy Paul Jasper Woodworking. I can, but it's
true.
Yeah.
Dominic, can I come back to a question or a point that we already raised, which is we talked about your rectangles. I love that you mentioned, just as a gut reaction, rectangles and rectangles. We built boxes, and my gut reaction was, does it have to be all rectangles? And this comes to, I think a quote. It reminds me of a quote I heard by Rick Rubin, the famous music producer. One of the quotes, I just loved it. And he said, and I think this is the exact wording: if you know what you want to do and you do it well, you're a craftsman. If you begin with a question and let that guide you on your journey of discovery, you're an artist. And I thought, you know what? I think he's right, because for many years I was a craftsman. I knew what I wanted to make. I copied a design of the past and I would just make it, and it was great and loved it. And then I started asking questions like, is there a shape that motivates humans more than others? Is there a shape that is just inherently just beautiful to all humans? that was like, and I'd like to go down this rabbit hole with you. I would say, Dominic, is there, so rectal, because it comes to your point about squares. So much is square, and the alternative is curved.
Mhm.
And so I would ask the question, do humans innately prefer squares or curves? Rectilinear or curvilinear? I'll put the question to you first.
I know. I think it would be speculation. It would be, it's so thank you, because that's a great question. And I think people might even pause the podcast and go, I got to think about that for a second before I go on.
Yeah. Think of your own answer.
Think of your own answers. So what occurs to me first is people that like squares, like that symmetry, like preciseness, like certainty, and of course, I'm a business coach. I'm a businessman. I like certainty. I like to know things are going to work. I like the functionality within and there can be beauty in squares and shapes that come together nicely. But I don't know. Do I like circles more? I can't. I would have trouble understanding. Cylinders being the case. If we had cylinders in my pompous kitchen, a kitchen with a bunch of cylinders rising out of it. But there's a place for that. Columns, right? There's a place for columns.
Okay.
But initially, I would say I like
You're like rectilinear. You like the
I
squares.
like rectilinear. I like things to match. I like things to flow at a prescribed, 90 degrees is supposed to be 90 degrees for a reason. But listen, I like Dr. Seuss art. I like the pictures in Dr. Seuss, which are really fantastical. And
so Dom, you're walking both sides of the question.
I know. Well, I would have to say rectilinear to use the word.
Yeah. Okay. So it turns out that this question was asked, and as a scientist, I'm all about hypothesis testing and experimentation. This question was asked many, many times over in the literature. And the way they asked this question to understand human preference, and I feel like as designers and people building things for humans, shouldn't we know what human preference is? Anyway, the way they tested this is they take 100 people and they would show them 2 identical rooms. And the rooms had 2 chairs and a desk and a window, both rooms, except one had nothing but rectilinear and the other had nothing but curves. Instead of a square desk, it had a curved desk, and it was the same size and the same overall shape, and it was the same location. The chairs, totally curvaceous versus totally square window, an oval window instead of a square window. And they would ask people, which do you prefer? Which could you see yourself walking into? Which makes you feel more calm based on, what you're seeing and how you're feeling? And they'd have to randomize whether they showed them the square room first or the curved room first, because even just the order of the question can introduce bias, as we know in science. So, they ran this experiment many times over with a huge number of individuals. So the N is powered very high into the thousands. And it turns out most humans prefer curves.
There you go.
And that conclusion comes out again and again and again. And when you think of how beautiful the human form can be, like Michelangelo's David, or the human female form, like the curves and the shapes, or if we think about cars, our cars don't have a single right angle on them anymore. They used to. Yeah. But I would be hard pressed to find a 90-degree angle on a car today. Everything's curved.
Because I push myself through a filter of thinking about a kitchen, and I don't want it to look chaotic. I want it to look clean and square. But you're right. I would prefer, okay. So what we've figured out on this show is that I don't know what I want.
Well, it's a great question. And your answer may be reflective of many people's answers. So I figured, all right, if this is true, that humans overwhelmingly prefer curves to square things, why do we always build things square? And I think the answer is it's easy. I think that's really the answer. It's so much easier.
Well, isn't it also functional? I mean, you want your countertop to be flat, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe.
I want to get as much use out of my space in the kitchen as I can. Or if I'm building a vanity, maybe a vanity's got a little more flair if I'm trying to do something funky with it. But there's a functionality and a use of space that comes into it.
Agree.
But you could also argue that's just being utilitarian. And I would say, I'm trying to get pots and pans in the thing. The pots and pans are round and they're all different shapes. And I want to systematize that inside a box.
Honestly, though, some of the most stunning kitchens I've ever seen have round elements balancing some of the rectilinear elements, whether it's a curved rack hanging with all these beautiful circles of copper pots, or, and that balances, that eases some of the square rectilinear drawer fronts, the interplay of the two. So the reason I brought this up is like, this was a question. And this led me down a whole series of things I've made. So I wanted to test whether I could figure out if this is true. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a very non-scientific test. I'm going to build a curvilinear box. It is basically, it's called a stadium shape, and it's two half circles connected by lines. It's like kind of like an oval, except it's, it's two semicircles that are connected.
Yeah,
and
I think I understand. So from stadium shape, it's if I looked at a stadium from a distance, it would be that.
Yes, profile. Yeah. So it's geometrically referred to as a stadium, this shape. So just think of an oval. It's basically a type of oval, if you will. So I made the first box, and it had nothing straight or square on it. It was an oval box, beautiful curves, just the lid was flat, but sure enough. And I asked, how did people react to this? Is the science playing out in the woodworking world that I can detect? And the response to these were overwhelming. People loved these little boxes. And I don't even understand it myself. And I have made hundreds and hundreds of these little curved boxes.
Now it's the bane of your existence. It's like, oh, you
want no. But this shows what Rick Rubin meant when he said, if you begin with a question and let that guide you on your journey of discovery, you're an artist. And this question has led to me using this stadium shape in every orientation. It could be oriented like this. It could be upright, like I've turned it into a whiskey cabinet. And me and my friend Keith Johnson, we've turned it into a huge whiskey cabinet, that's 3 feet tall, and the oval standing on its, standing vertically. We've rolled it over into a speaker. We've had it as little keepsake boxes. I've used it in every possible orientation. I've moved it on the XYZ axis and made something different with it every time. And it just shows that I think there's truth to that sometimes a simple question like, what do humans prefer, can lead to years. I've been at it, this particular curved piece, I've been at it for 4 or 5 years, and it still has legs, and there's still so much use for it. So I just thought, given that your comment about the rectangular box, and it just all tied into this whole piece about, human preference and artists.
There's another angle that came up as you were describing that, which is asking the open-ended question. So can you repeat that question again from Rick Rubin?
If you know what you want to do and you do it well, you're a craftsman. If you begin with a question and let that guide you in your journey of discovery, you're an artist.
Okay. So I'm about to get all business coachy on this, but beginning with a question is a great way to develop a relationship and help somebody make a decision on their, I'll say kitchen, but really it's an open-ended question for buying. Don't go in thinking you have all the answers. Go in and ask great questions. What does it mean to you? Because I recognize that when you asked me the question about shapes, I immediately had pictures that floated through my mind about, well, do I like it when right angles come together, or do I want like a chaotic Dr. Seuss kind of thing? I wouldn't feel comfortable in a Dr. Seuss thing. But then when you went back and re-explained a room with curved chairs and a curved desk, I'd love a curved desk. I'd like a curved chair that looked comfortable and inviting. And so when we're having conversations with our potential customers or with designers that we want to work with, are they seeing the same images they're describing to me? And am I seeing the same thing? Or do I need to ask more questions? Or as I like to say, do I just shut up and ask questions and then shut up and listen? And they'll tell me their design intent. They'll tell me what they're trying to accomplish. They'll tell me what problems they have and how I can then solve those, but only after I clearly understand their problem or their vision. See, this is great business point. Coach versus
great point.
Artist.
Great point.
But it can play in so many ways, right?
Yeah. I like what you said about asking people questions and listening to their response. It's my experience that almost no one listens. Everyone wants to talk. And if you listen as a business partner or as the designer or working with a customer, if you listen to them, God, they appreciate you so much. And you could really give them what they want because you're really hearing them, deeply of what they're looking for. And, there's so much to be said about being a good listener.
there is an art to listening that includes silence. There's a great line, by the way, from Pulp Fiction. Uma Thurman and John Travolta are in that restaurant, that famous restaurant scene.
Hmm.
And she goes, "Are you really listening, or are you just waiting for your turn to talk?"
That's a great. That's a good one.
Right? It's a nice burn.
Yes.
But
yes.
asking questions and then following up with other open-ended questions, like if somebody answers your question, you say, tell me more about that. And it could be something simple, like, we want to build this kitchen, but we're a little bit worried about budget. Okay, interesting. So you're worried about budget. Tell me more about that. So you've heard them say they're worried about budget, or they're worried about space, or they're worried about light, or they're worried about the pony wall they got to get around, whatever it is, right? Tell me more about that. And you've heard them, as opposed to the other person who comes in and says, yeah, don't worry, we're going to knock that all out of the way. This is what we're going to do. Write a price in the back of the business card. We get it done. I can have you done in 6 weeks. People don't want that experience. They want the person who says, tell me what you mean by that. Right?
Great points. I couldn't agree more.
I have to learn that too sometimes.
Oh, we all have to remember it.
Oh, yeah.
So, Dom, I'd like to ask a follow-up question about the creativity piece to you and your audience. And if we say, okay, let's say creativity and having some original design ideas is something good, and we want to try it. What's holding us back? Why haven't we tried it yet? Why do we just keep copying the designs of other people and of the past? And why haven't we given ourselves the opportunity to figure out who we are as designers?
That's a point for us to pause and let people consider that.
Yeah.
Because people, the people listening to the show are craftspeople and hobbyists. There's a few of those, a couple of doctors, as we've come to find out. A couple of doctors. Right. But we've also got people that are trying to make cabinets, trying to make a living, trying to pay for stuff so they can get their kids braces. Right.
For sure.
So we've got cabinetry, we've got all levels of sizes of business. Then we've got architectural mill workers who are building, beyond kitchen cabinets. And I don't mean to offend anybody in kitchen cabinets, but they're doing restaurants or commercial work in some way, shape, or fashion. And then we've got other specialists out there that are doing woodwork that I probably haven't even mentioned. One of my first clients ever built coffins and caskets, which are really there's a slight difference in definition. And then one of my other clients built pool tables. But we're all still woodworkers. All still woodworkers, right? And then there's people that do other things. So how do they bring creativity, or how do they allow that creativity to come in? It would be different for everybody. For me, the question is how you do business.
The question was, if they haven't taken the leap, in essence, why didn't they? What was holding them back? What are they afraid of?
Yeah.
So I have a few answers, but I figure you could hazard a guess. You guys, your own answers first. Like, if you hadn't pursued original design, why didn't you?
I would say because you want to build what works and what is producible. So, are you biting your nails, or are you upset with me?
I'm biting my nails.
You're waiting for your chance to say, well,
Dominic. No. I think your answer is the same as one of mine. You're just saying it in different words, but
sure. But I'd love to hear your thought on it. Why wouldn't we?
Well, I think it's fear. I think that was fear. Like, that's the word that came to my mind as soon as I heard you. We want to make something that we know is producible and usable, because if we don't, then X.
So the word in my mind was certainty. I can build this, and so I can produce this, and so it will fit in the space.
Well, risk. You're mitigating risk.
I'm mitigating risk. Well, I'm a business person, right? I want to mitigate risk, but I also want to make sure I'm mitigating risk on the side. I don't have the confidence to say to the customer, I'm going to build what I want for you and you're going to love it. Because as soon as they say, well, I don't like it, I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back and build the other thing. And then,
well, you don't build it without showing them. Yeah. You got to show them first.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think a few typical answers that I get to this question is what you said is I want certainty, or fear of failure is like huge. We're
Mm.
so afraid to make a misstep. It's going to cost me time. It's going to cost me money. Fear of failure, it hits our ego because unfortunately we all have an ego that's telling us, oh, you're good at what you do. But what if you're not? What if you take a risk and you're like, I'm going to try to design something and someone doesn't like it?
It
How
fails.
will you absorb that? From a feeling perspective. So fear of failure, ego, vulnerability. And I think as a fail safe, people, they disqualify themselves. They say, well, I'm not an artist, so I'm not even going to try. They just
Mm.
literally disqualify themselves from even trying. And that's a cop out, to be honest. You
Yeah.
might you might struggle with art, but it doesn't mean you couldn't do it. And you say, oh, I'm not an artist, or they have imposter syndrome, right?
That's very
I'm
common
not,
for
I'm
many of
not
us.
really an artist like those people are, right? Okay, so that's a huge one, and I think that's more like mental emotional. And then there's another one that is, well, shit, the execution is so difficult, right? Learning good execution is really tough. I spent 10 to 12 years, and that's not even that long, learning how to do woodworking execution. So most of us tend to just stay there. Once we made it through the marathon of execution, oh, phew, and
Yeah.
we prioritize learning process as opposed to learning design, right? How many times have you seen an article about how to build better dovetailed boxes, or how to cut a better mortise and tenon, or how to build a better jig for this or that?
Yeah.
Compare the number of times you've seen that to the number of times you've seen, how many times can have you seen like an article on how to design better? I
Uh,
don't know that I've seen that at all, ever.
well, wouldn't that be in more of the creative types of publications?
It might be. It's not in the woodworking space. That much is true.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to go looking in the graphic design space, which I do, or the art school space, which I
Right.
do,
My daughter
to
just started
try
art
and.
school. She just first year, first
Oh,
week
Dominic. Oh, I
of
can't
of
wait. I want her
art
to hear
college.
this, and I want her to get on you about
Oh,
design.
she will. She will.
Good. She's like,
Yeah.
Dad, why are you
Oh,
so stiff? Why are you such a
yeah.
square?
Why? I know. She's so creative, so incredibly creative. Like, just a really
So,
quick, cute story about her creativity.
yeah, go ahead.
She was a little girl, and she was learning to ride her bicycle. And we'd taken a vacation on a little island near here, and riding down the gravel road, and there's trees over top. It's a sunny day, and as we're riding down the path, there's sunbeams coming through. Right. I didn't see that. What I saw was she was swerving all over the road, and I was that dad jogging beside her little pink bike. Right.
Mm.
And I'm like, Valencia, will you stay in a straight line? And she just went,
She's
but
like, I'm
daddy,
avoiding the shadows, right?
no, well, she said, Daddy, I'm trying to hit the sunbeams. I know. See what your face did? My entire body did that. I was like,
Mm.
I'm an evil ogre. How could I not see the
You're
beauty that
not.
she saw? She just saw
Mm.
the beauty of riding down this beautiful road, gravel
Right.
road with the trees overhead and the sun streaming through. And all she wanted to do was hit the sunbeams. And I just
That's
wanted her to ride
adorable.
straight, she's been that way since the moment she's born. It's just
That's
that honesty
adorable.
in art, isn't it? But that's the creativity. That's how she's always seen them.
Yeah,
Right.
she sees the world different from you. And that brings up, Dominic, another point that is going to be hard, which is nature, which we always find beautiful. There's very few humans who don't find nature beautiful, is rarely straight and square.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking that when you asked me the original question, because I love being in the forest. And there's straight lines if you look at the lines of the trees and stuff,
Sure,
but
maybe the
really
trunks of the trees.
yeah, but it's ultimately it's random with repeating shapes. And
Yes,
there's rocks and
yes.
moss and rivers, and yeah, I love that. So how do at the same time do I so it's funny you
Yeah.
say that, because that was in my head. It's part of the answer.
It's great that you said that, because nature doesn't seem to make a design mistake. If you think of the mountains in the distance, they're so beautiful. They're not straight and square.
No.
They're all over the place. And
Yeah.
trees, like the canopy of trees, is just and whether uh, things in the ocean, or fish, it's all curvilinear. The beautiful curve of the side of a fish or a nautilus shell that we're so in love with, or So nature's another great place to find design inspiration besides asking questions. So that just came up organically. I hadn't planned to talk about that.
No, that's great. Listen, we've had a fantastic conversation, and but let's go to this part here. If somebody wants to find you, if they want to, obviously your Instagram page, and I've seen it, is fantastic. That coffin thing you're talking about, that coffin thing. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's okay.
But
It's a joy box.
The art that you make out of wood is beautiful. And I know that a lot of people got into this by doing, inspirational things and maybe found themselves in the cabinetry side or are doing cabinetry and want to get into the inspirational side. How do we find you in this big wide world?
Probably most of the best way to find me is on Instagram, Copper Pig Fine Woodworking, or on my website, www.copperpigwoodworking.com.
Yeah. And then what are you allowed to say what you're working on in immunology? Like what's the big master project, or can you speak about it?
I could say in general terms, yeah, it changes from, the real hotbed issues are autoimmune diseases where you're attacking yourself, cancer. Those are really the two biggest disease areas that I'm usually working on because they represent the biggest problem in our population.
Well, there you go. Start with answering the problem.
Yeah, being a scientist is all about asking questions and then looking for answers, and woodworking doesn't necessarily have to be that different.
Yeah, I love it. I love the way you brought those two together. This has been such an incredibly different interview than those that I normally do. And I'll be honest, I felt a little bit lost in some of the questions that I asked, but I really appreciate the fact that you asked me some questions to fill in those gaps. I picked up on that. I love it. Dr. Paul Jasper, thank you very much for being a guest today. We'll have you back on again.
Great, Dominic. It was great talking to you, and I hope your audience found today's discussion useful.
I think so. It's been great. Thanks. Well. What did you learn from Paul? Pretty interesting interview. I like the way he turned things around, asked me a bunch of questions, very intelligent questions. This was completely different. I hope you noticed. Completely different than almost all of the other episodes I've done. We've done pretty close to 400 episodes between the two podcasts that I host. And I talk to a lot of business owners and a lot of professionals every single day. And I've been doing that for over 23 years. I've only been a business coach for 23 years. I've been in business for longer than that. And that was different. That was definitely different. And I hope you enjoyed it. But here's the question is, what can you put in place from what you learned or heard or observed in today's meeting? Maybe it was the fact that your past doesn't define you. If you were doing something else before and now you're in a wood shop, running a wood shop, you can go and make this wood shop what you want it to be. You heard me say that there's lots of people who listen to this show, and I have the really great honor of speaking to you. There's a gentleman out there. His initials are JE. How you doing, bud? He's been listening to the show for a very long time. When he started listening, he was 150,000 in sales in his shop. And he started applying some of the things he learned on the show, got up to 450,000. And now he's over $1 million in sales a year. His creativity maybe didn't come the way Paul's did, where creativity was in the product. His creativity came in the process. Maybe your creativity is in the process. Maybe your creativity is in leading people. Maybe your creativity is on something. I don't know what it is. What was your answer? What are you going to put in place based on what you learned today? Because that's the challenge I put in front of you. The final segment of the show is broken into 3 equal and equally important parts. First, we got the dad jokes. Those are very important. And I know they're important because I hear back from you and say, Dom, those dad jokes are horrible. But when everybody comments on it, you have to know they're doing it with a smile. So we're going to do some horrible dad jokes. Then I'm going to ask you a favor. And if you've listened to the episode more than twice, you know what the favor is. I'm going to ask you again today. I'm going to ask you a very specific favor to leave a review for the podcast. And I'm going to tell you why in a few seconds. And then together, we're going to identify a common problem for contractors and business owners like yourself. And today's theme that we're going to solve goes away from the artistic side that Dr. Jasper took us through. But I'm going to talk about the issues that maybe you find yourself facing around time and time management, around team, so that's people, and then money, cash, loot, dinero, cheddar, change, coins, dollars, bucks, whatever you call it. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So if that's a challenge that you face as a business owner, stay tuned. But first, let's get to the dad jokes. And why dad jokes? Why bad jokes? Why dad jokes poorly delivered? I don't know another way. I only have one default way of delivering bad jokes. It's badly. So I'm going to deliver them poorly. Your challenge, if you accept it, is to go do it better. When you're talking to your friends, your neighbors, your kids, your wife, whatever it is, I want to bring a smile to your face. If that's the job, if that's part of the job that I have, is to bring a smile to your face every once in a while, I'm happy to do it. Because at the same time, I also own the right and the privilege to challenge you every once in a while, to stick a finger in your ear and shake your brain around and try to get you to do different things. I had to learn this stuff myself. Nobody's a self-made entrepreneur without learning and listening, or as they say, standing on the shoulders of giants. And you've got to do the same thing, and I've got to do the same thing. Okay, let's get this figured out. And let's do that by changing our thinking. Dr. Jasper already challenged us to change our thinking, and he wasn't even trying. We brought an artistic element to many of you who listen to the show for purely business reasons. I'm going to do it now by sharing some super corny jokes. All right, look, a mid-century chair walks into a bar. Bartender says, "Come on over and have a seat." And the chair says, "I can't. I'm all tapered out." Hey, what's a dog's favorite piece of furniture? Some of you might guess this one. What's a dog's favorite piece of furniture? The Barca Lounger. Why? Now, hey, listen, this is a family show, but I think we can wrap this one up in scientific language. I chose this one because Paul Jasper is also a doctor. So I felt like I could put a bit of a furniture joke in there and a bit of a medical joke in there at the same time. Why did the proctologist go to the furniture store? He needed a stool sample. I'm gonna give you all a moment to stop shaking your head, wipe the tears out of your eyes, stretch your back a little bit, refocus yourselves, and get into the next segment here. This is the segment I told you about. I'm going to ask you a favor. I'm flat out going to ask you for something. I need you. Actually, it's going to be a flat out bribe if you don't mind. If you find value in the podcast, I would very humbly ask you to leave a review. And I hope, as you've seen by listening to the show, I believe in giving massive value before I ask for anything in return at all. I learned a very, very long time ago that it's my job to throw massive value at the world, so much value that I'm happy with the overspray. Think about the visual on that. I want to throw enough value at the world that I'm happy with the overspray. That tells you how I enter every single day, every single transaction, everything I do. I want to make sure I give a ton of value before anything comes back to me. I'm going to do that here now. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to leave a review for the podcast, or if you're watching this on YouTube, give it a like or subscribe or whatever you do, on any of the platforms you're on. Somehow leave thumbs up, somehow leave 5 stars, somehow leave as many stars as you feel is honest and your assessment of the show. But the reason I need that is not for me. It's for the people who will come behind you. Look, as many of you know, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I wrote a book maybe a year and a half ago. It's called Construction Millionaire Secrets. It's available on Amazon. Many of you have bought the book, and I appreciate it. The book's well reviewed, gives a ton of great value on how to run successful, profitable construction business. If you've read the book, you know that right in the intro, I said, this book was written in gray hair and wrinkles. And it's information that I didn't make up myself. I learned it in construction trailers, boardroom tables, conference calls, flying from city to city and country to country, as I did for many years, meeting with contractors and construction business owners and developers and architects and designers. And over the years, I've found consistencies. If you kick the darkness for long enough, little cracks of light start to appear. And so I took 20 of those cracks of light, and those are the 20 secrets inside the book, Construction Millionaire Secrets. There's lots of case studies and stuff. People really do enjoy the book. It's very easy to read. And some of you know this. I don't know why. There's a thing. And the thing is this. People take a picture of themselves reading that book in their bathroom. I'm going to leave the visual to you, but I got a ton of people who've sent me pictures, which I laugh at. I think it's funny, of themselves reading the book on the toilet. So it's that kind of book. You can keep it right next to you there, that comfortable spot. But I understand the lighting is really good. Nobody's going to bug you. There's a constant flow of fresh air, let's just say. So people like to read it there. Anyways, we're rewriting the book and adding completely new sections on time management, which is something we're going to talk about in a second. So time management for contractors, right? I'm going to expand on things you've heard about in the show. Things like time management is all about priority management. Things like time management is actually like brushing your dog, right? We've already got a working outline for the new format, and I know you're going to love it. We put a lot of work into this. Helen and I have been working on this a lot. Helen my EA, my executive assistant, you may not know this about her, but she's the editor of a poetry magazine. Like, she's a serious powerhouse in her other life. And so I've harnessed that here to help us edit the book and add new sections. So anyways, let's get back to the reviews. The truth is, and you probably know this because that's how you found the show, people look at reviews when they make a decision on choosing a new show. And if a show has a lot of reviews, they say to themselves, hey, a bunch of other smart and intelligent and good-looking people like this show, I should give it a try. Okay, maybe I'm piling it on too much there, but if you leave a review for the show and take a screen capture or a picture of the review, just text it to me. And when the book comes out, I'll send you a free copy of the book. It's going to be a paperback. So you're going to get a physical version of the book as my thank you for leaving a review. Okay, as soon as it comes out, you'll get a copy before anybody else, and you don't have to buy it. All you have to do is leave a review. So I'm bribing you. It's a flat out bribe. And the way to send that to me is, no surprise, folks, say it with me, 315-903-7853. So just take a picture of it, however you choose to do it, and send that to me. And then when the book comes out, you'll be on the list to get a copy of the book as it comes out, right? I really can't think, guys, of a less complicated, a simpler way to get in touch with me than texting me. If you know it, and if you know a better way, tell me that. If you do that for me, because you're doing that for me, think of the entrepreneurs who are waiting for you to tell them that this is a safe and educated place to come to learn about the business of the contracting business. These are safe waters, if you will. And so I'm happy to do this for you. I'm trying to figure out a way to add value to you when there's something that I also need. So asking for a review and exchanging it for a free copy of the book when it comes out seems to be a good way to do that. So text me a picture of your review, 315-903-7853. And I really do appreciate it. It's not going to cost you a dime. It's not. But let me remind you, it is going to put out one little twinkle of good into the world for somebody else to see. I'll leave it at that. And I look forward to seeing your reviews. Now, let's get to the next part here on the time, team, and money. Some of you know this already, but I work around consistent themes, and I've been a business coach since the year 2000. So if you do the math, that's a long time. When I talk to business owners, I never know what the challenge is going to be. I've given up even trying to guess, but it always comes down to some combination of a few different buckets. People are concerned about time. People have questions for me about team. People are stuck in the area of money. People want to grow. So there's exit strategy or growth strategy. And then there's marketing and sales. I'm putting that out in the world, I guess, and it's coming back to me. But if people have questions about those things, that's where I get questions. That's where I get phone calls. If the Chamber of Commerce calls me, that's what they ask me to speak about. If your trade network wants me to speak at your conference, that's what I get asked to speak about: time, team, money, growth, exit strategy, sales, or marketing. And that goes to follow because that has been my area of expertise in growing my own businesses in the world. So we have a workshop that we put on every once in a while. And the only way I put it on is if I have a wait list big enough, and then we send an email to everybody and say, how does this date time work? And then it goes. So if you want to be on the wait list for the time, team, and money masterclass, then again, send me a text message. You guys know the number. Say it with me, 315-903-7853. Then I'll get you on the wait list. And again, once the wait list gets big enough, then we'll host a call. What you get by doing it on that kind of, it's a Zoom conference call, or it's a webinar, but I can share visuals that I can't share easily on a podcast, obviously, but there's visuals that you can take a picture with your phone on the screen. You can take things away. I'm going to explain time. There's some visuals that you need to see about time that are going to stick in your head. Once they're in there, you can't get them out, right? I'm going to explain time from two different perspectives. Time, personal time for you as the owner, but also operational time. We're not going to be talking about lean manufacturing or Kaizen or Kanban boards, but we're going to be talking about the tools that sit above that to help you manage your time. So, and I should add this, time management from an entrepreneur's viewpoint, not from the viewpoint of somebody who works at a company and has a boss, because everybody who listens to this show is the business owner, is the entrepreneur. So that's, if I wrap up time in a bow, that's what you're going to learn on the masterclass. So get on the wait list for that. The other thing we cover aside from time is team, the key to finding and keeping winners and the clue to get rid of whiners. You guys maybe have heard me say this before, but winners brighten a room by entering it, and losers brighten a room by leaving. So if you've got that going on in your company and there's somebody you need to leave, there's a way that we can organize things so that they'll put their hand up and say, hey, things have changed around here a little bit. I can't really put my finger on it, but I think it's time for me to go. And you'll be silently golf clapping in the corner. They do it to themselves. But I could also talk about team from another perspective. Think about the big franchise companies that are hiring all sorts of people who were never trained in that trade, right? How does Starbucks isn't a franchise, but it's a big chain company. How does Starbucks keep a great attitude in every store you go to? Or in these franchises, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, or You Move Me, or Wow One Day Paint. How do they have such a great attitude amongst all of their people? That's the tool I'm going to share with you there. By the way, I used to coach 1-800-GOT-JUNK a number of years ago. And then on the money side, because this is the Time Team and Money Masterclass, on the money side, focus, clarity, and confidence around money. No one is born with this information. You have to learn it. I had to learn it, at least. I wasn't born with it. We didn't even talk about it at my kitchen table. I grew up at a trades kitchen table. My dad's a journeyman fabricator, a welder. We didn't talk about business at my kitchen table. I had to go learn this stuff. Anyways, my point is, if you want to be on the wait list, just text the word wait list to me at 315-903-7853. All you're doing is getting on the wait list. Then we'll send you an invite. And if the time works, join us. So text me 315, say it with me, 315-903-7853, and just say wait list. And then you'll be on the wait list. And then again, when the event comes up, we'll let you know, and you can come if you can. All right. Thanks for checking in, folks. Thanks again to Dr. Paul Jasper. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And I really do look forward to the day you and I can sit down across the table, have a glass of wine, a cup of coffee, or a beer, shake hands, and talk like real humans instead of over this podcast machine. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.